Om Shanti. Welcome to Interview with Raj Yogi. And our topic in this session is embracing obstacles. So, as usual, before we get into that, we'll start with a reflection. Spirituality teaches me that the outer world is really a creation of my inner world. What's going on inside, thoughts, attitudes, perspectives, is very much shaping what happens outside. Some are afraid to go inside within, afraid of what they might discover. And yet, this simple formula that the inside impacts the outer suggests I have to go within, see, and understand what's happening in my inner world. Cultivating the qualities of self-trust, patience, openness, compassion, so I can move into my inner world without fear. Shine the light of spiritual wisdom and begin to understand my own inner dynamics. No fear looking within, knowing this is the secret to happiness without. Om Shanti. Om Shanti, and welcome to Interview with Raj Yogi. Again, our topic is embracing obstacles. So there is a phrase in everyday life we hear. It's a pretty harsh phrase, or maybe a strong phrase. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Mm-hmm. So there's so many different other types of quotes that are similar. There's no pain, no gain. What is this uniqueness of this study in terms of embracing obstacles? I really feel that where there is understanding, there is not going to be any violence. And I think that's why that phrase sounds so harsh. It just sounds like we're going to battle it out, and the victor of this battle, the one left standing, after violent wrestling with the demons within or without. Whereas the feeling in spirituality is that, yes, I am definitely going to get stronger, but it's not this battle to the death. It is an understanding what the resistance or opposition or obstacles are. And through that understanding, beginning to transform so that I actually do become experienced and stronger. Maybe taking the violence out of it all. When you mention understanding, could you go a little bit more into what that is, maybe even specifics? I think understanding is kind of peeling back what is temporary and really understanding what is eternal, because that's what sort of drives the show, are these eternal aspects of soul, supreme soul, matter, really understanding how these work. But also this idea of understanding the formulas of spirituality. For example, whatever is happening outside, if I'm feeling that there's challenges or obstacles in situations or interactions, what the formula of spirituality suggests is that's because of something snagging inside. So that's a very useful and powerful formula to know, because it's very empowering. Otherwise, I land up again battling, controlling, forcing, manipulating the outer bits, whether it's people or situations, and I never actually grow or learn. So we notice the same things. I might win that particular battle, but the war wages on, another battle ensues because the cause or the seed of the problem was never addressed and it's inside. So those formulas of spirituality are super helpful in really affecting change.
When you were sharing about this aspect of understanding in terms of going beyond, going deeper than these temporary perceptions and going into the eternal, that helps to clarify, I feel, because I was just listening to an interview earlier today. And that to be able to see that obstacles are there to help me to move forward. And I was thinking so much about this aspect of soul consciousness. How much is that needed? Because wouldn't it just be enough that I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn in this situation. Every moment is a learning opportunity. Shouldn't that just be enough, just to keep reminding myself that over and over and over again through the day?
One thing that soul consciousness gives us, it's even referred to as this third eye of wisdom. So yes, I can have the attitude, I'm going to learn from whatever is happening, but I also need the vision to be able to see what's there to be learned. So great to have the attitude, but I need the equipment. It's a bit like a photographer going into a situation. I'm going to take some great photos of these, but I have no camera. Got a great attitude. I'm really excited, but I need the equipment. So similarly, I need to be equipped with the right perspective to actually be able to learn from what's going on.
What happens if I don't have, if that isn't something I keep practicing, soul consciousness, and I have this attitude that I want to learn?
I think it's going to eventually revert back to violence, to battling. I mean, understanding is so important. Part of understanding is this idea of how I see things. So soul consciousness really moves us into a different perspective.
So just clarifying one thing about soul consciousness, I've been thinking so much about this particular quality called detachment. This capacity to become free from the temporary. Is that something that you feel is an important ingredient in terms of being able to see things in a benevolent way, see things without reacting, seeing the benefit in every situation?
It's definitely a part of soul consciousness. And soul consciousness really is helping to define the two aspects of I and mine. So right now we have a lot of attachment to what we call mine. And that attachment rather than detachment is actually really blurring our vision, blinding us a lot. So the moment I start to become free of that illusion, really, I am an eternal being, a soul moving through a temporary landscape. Nothing can ever be mine. It can't go with me. It's temporary. I'm eternal. So nothing can ever, I can't hold on to something forever. I have to let it go. Just today, I was in a class. There's just one soul in the class. And so here in Calgary, we're starting to have some floods again. So we were just remembering the floods of 2013. It sounds like the war of 1812, the floods of 2013. And where the conversation went was that the whole point really of that exercise was to let go. And so she was just sharing that she felt very strongly this was, letting go has become, we're quite poor in it. So the attachments deeply blinds us. This is mine. And so I start to see everything through the lens of that attachment rather than the lens, nothing can really be mine. Let me figure out what really is mine and what is not mine and see through that lens. And it's going to make a big difference.
How do you feel that it's practically been, I'm not sure if the word helpful is really the word I'm looking for, but transformative in terms of what the intent of Raj Yoga is about and this capacity to let go when it comes to so-called obstacles in front of us?
We had a very interesting lesson this morning about attachment and how it really fills the space of our minds. So if you find during the day that you just can't stop thinking about something, this is the product of attachment. And because I can't stop from the sense of how can, it's my idea, it's my position, it's my project, it's my relation, whatever the case. So I'm constantly thinking about it in the sense of I want it to go a certain way. So now I have just created my own obstacle. I'm so attached to it going a certain way that if it's going any other way, I view it as an obstacle rather than, it's trying to go another way. Maybe there is a reason it's trying to go another way. So I'm blind to that possibility because I am so attached to it going a certain way, and I can't really appreciate what benefit there might be in this other way it's going. I just see it as an obstacle.
Are there particularly certain limits to that? I want it to go a certain way, and you've got someone who's, just breaking laws or creating harm or something like that. And let's say something very extreme,
Yeah.
like what do I do in terms of my awareness at that time?
The beauty of spirituality, it makes it so simple for us. We don't need to figure out any details. The whole objective of spirituality is win-win for everyone. So what we get to attach to is this attitude of whatever is beneficial, let that unfold. Not what I want, not what someone else wants. Whatever is beneficial for everyone in the scene, let that unfold. That requires that you really not be attached to what you want to happen. So this works even in extreme situations. I'm going to really focus my attitude on whatever is beneficial. And we even actually recruit God in that. But it's very tricky to be able to separate oneself from that very clean attitude and I want, and what I want is right. Versus forget about what I want or what I think is whatever is beneficial, let that unfold. And the reason is that there's these formulas operating, law of karma, settlement of accounts that have to happen. And so what we call the bigger story or the bigger picture. So in my limited concepts or desires, I may not be at all focusing on what is beneficial in the scope of the bigger karmic story.
I was listening to one of the senior students mention today and trying to bring it into a context that's more pedestrian language. She was saying others have to do their own thing, but she was saying there's certain principles that still need to be observed. Kind of like, you want everyone in the room to be safe. I'm using very simple examples. There's a fire going on. So it certainly feels like there needs to be a certain capacity inside to be able to see in a way that's healthy versus just being apathetic and just letting whatever happen. Oh, there's a fire going. I don't have to run out the door. I know this is in the extreme, but I feel that many souls feel like they struggle with being able to, how do I actually, it feels like spirituality is often seen as something you just do nothing.
It's
Mhm.
actually all about power, spirituality. Again, it's a very unique form of power. So, yes, I'm trying to, again, steer things in a benevolent direction, be part of things moving in a benevolent direction without any desires or attachments involved. So, what we use is something called power, purity. Very pure feelings, very, and this again comes back to soul consciousness,
Mm.
very pure feelings. That, you can have two people give someone the same direction. You should do this, it's beneficial to you can do, and it might very well be beneficial. In one case, they follow the advice, and the other, they do not.
Mhm.
What was the difference? The exact same script. What was different was the invisible bits,
Mhm.
the attitude, the purity of feelings, the respect. That's always, again, these very benevolent aspects, no attachment, no force, no judgment. Really have to douse the area with so much purity in order to, in this example you're giving, for that beneficial thing to happen, those beneficial principles to be upheld. I have to have very pure feelings.
It first feels like I need to be able to have those pure feelings for myself.
Mhm.
I feel that often the case, many hear things, and it's not anyone's fault. We've just become so externalized. We hear something like, there needs to be pure feelings. Oh, I need to have pure feelings for others. And again, you're forcing that experience. But when I was just reflecting on that title of embracing obstacles, where do you feel self-respect, self-worth comes into play with respect to soul consciousness in terms of, again, when obstacles emerge in front of me, of how I perceive things?
I really liked an aspect that was brought up in this interview, referring to, um, obviously, I can't give what I don't have.
Mm.
So, what does pure feelings towards the self look like? It looks like self-respect, and specifically what was brought into the conversation was self-confidence, self-trust. Um, and those are built, the method to build those is soul consciousness and yoga with Supreme Soul. So those build the self-confidence and self-trust. Someone who has self-confidence and self-trust embraces obstacles.
Mm.
They go in there with that feeling of, I have the experience, the capacity to be able to respond. So the pure feelings towards the self, on a very practical level, is quite essential.
Mhm. This journey of being able to know the difference between, it seems like might not feel like a difference for souls, but purity versus positivity in terms of seeing obstacles. And I know this has come up often to when we used to have the pure thinking course. There's something that's happening right now. And how do I manage looking at it? It feels like it's very connected to what you were sharing about, what is true understanding.
Yeah, and what we suggest when we look at these two, there's definitely positivity in purity, but there may not be purity in positivity. So purity actually requires that one fully digest or absorb spiritual knowledge, truth into themselves. That's not necessarily required for positivity. And so, because of really absorbing spiritual knowledge, again, there's that detachment, that really healthy detachment, not blinded by desires or what I want to happen. So, really absorbing the truth into the self creates that purity, and that isn't really required for positivity. It's just, I hope this happens. It would be good if this happens. This would be a nice thing to happen, versus whatever is benevolent.
With respect to this aspect of self confidence, self respect, self worth, to be able to have pure feelings, how does one, I guess you can say, discern if they're basically their judgment is accurate in terms of, it just feels right that this should happen or that should happen, where there could also be some ego. I feel that this should happen or that should happen. Do you feel, with your experience being in Raja Yoga, to be able to feel the difference between the two? Because I think sometimes it can feel unclear, like that righteous feeling can sometimes be very convincing.
I've always felt, yes, it can be very convincing, but it comes with a certain vibe.
Mm.
I've always felt if you feel that it's got to happen right now, then it might be coming from that ego place. There's so much force when it's coming from the ego or arrogance. It's very forceful. It fills the space of the mind constantly. There isn't really a lot of trust or patience. So it has a certain vibe to it when it's coming. And as you go along, you start to recognize, is that vibe there? Is it coming in that kind of package? So I know it's ego. Whereas if it's like, I trust, if it's really the right thing, then I don't need to force it.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen. And it's great because if it's also the right thing, others seem to also be aligning with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you're mentioning that something has to happen, but perhaps maybe souls don't really even see it that way. Well, it's something that needs to happen. It's that, am I perhaps maybe doing something that I shouldn't be doing?
And again, I think we spend so much time. It's so important to spend time just experiencing soul consciousness and the eternal qualities of the soul. So I know what that feels like when the alignment is on. Because then when I'm in these different scenarios where there has to be decisions or choices, I just check, am I in that feeling? Is that alignment there? Is that deep peace? We say Om Shanti so much, but it's actually an experience. It's not just something to say. It's I am eternally a peaceful being. Like that feeling, when I'm seated, I need to feel these qualities. And then as I'm interacting, acting, making choices, decisions, is that alignment there? So a lot of time spent just experiencing, that true alignment of being a soul. And that will help me a lot when I'm in those situations.
In your experience, it's been many, many years you've been in this study. Have you found, just accumulating the experience of soul consciousness, that internal stillness, that you find that solutions just naturally emerge?
Yeah, so we say the intellect works better. And I find this a very interesting topic because sometimes, the intellect just feels this, something's a little off. So it just feels like, but it may not, because we didn't analyze our way there. The reasoning may take a moment to catch up. So you're feeling, okay, this feels strange. I'm not sure if we should do this right now. And others will ask why. And you may not have a response immediately because it's just a feeling. The beauty of a well-functioning intellect is actually far-sighted. So it's feeling something, some far-sighted impact of that decision. So the reason, because so many of the decisions we make, we go for temporary gain. In the short run, it looks like a really good idea. But when the intellect functions well, it actually, we say it can go into these different aspects of time and actually can feel this is the long-term consequence of what we're about to do. But again, it's just feeling it. It may not even really be able to articulate it at that moment. It just feels this is off. And so that's kind of a fascinating part about soul consciousness. You're more and more sensitive to what is beneficial without analyzing your way there. It's just the intellect can immediately sense this is off.
I feel oftentimes it's actually not what I do, but how I do, that you could come up on a surface to the same decision, but it's really what feelings are behind it.
Definitely, law of karma and just common sense is really interested in the invisible aspects of what we're doing. Again, you can have two people giving the same advice to someone. In one case, they respect the advice, in the other, they reject it. What was the difference? And it was the invisible aspects, whether there was those pure feelings, that respect. So we're very sensitive, we are, and the law of karma is very sensitive to the invisible parts.
Mhm. This aspect of just being able to check the purity of my feelings is a very loyal, I suppose, go-to. And even just to be able to trust that, experiment with that. And it's very powerful, I find, because in a way we're really used to, just weighing the pros and cons about certain things, seeing things on a very surface level. But when it comes to this internal compass, I know we call it the intellect, it's fascinating how to trust that. It's like, I don't particularly use the word intuition, but you really sometimes don't even have an explanation to say this feels right and this doesn't feel right.
And that's back to that purity of self-confidence, self-trust, that this feeling comes and you give it some, you listen to it. I remember being in a situation where in the short term, as it was unfolding, it looked kind of awkward or uncomfortable. And if someone say, oh, that's really bad, and you sort of was being criticized for the choice made, but it felt like so clear to me, this is what I need to do. And I did not even really understand. I mean, part of me was saying, oh, I can see exactly what's going to happen in the short run if I make this choice. And yet there was so much trust, but there is a long-term reason that we need to do this. So as time unfolded, I could see clearly why that choice had to be made. But it really requires a lot of self-trust.
Do you feel that there would have to be those peaceful feelings, like this doesn't feel right, it can't happen that way, versus judgment? I mean, that's what I guess I mean. Like, could you come to that same decision, but there could be some defensiveness or fear or something? I think we just often look at things at a surface level. Oh, I just have to do it this way or do it that way.
I think, again, purity is going to be the story over and over. So the peaceful feelings are there because I have no attachments. I have no desires. I'm completely content. That's why the peaceful feelings are there. So whether or not people like me, it's like I'm not needy as I'm making these decisions. It really is just an instrument to what is most beneficial.
I feel ultimately, and we just have to experiment and practice, is you start to learn in the study, there's really no textbook per se. There is the formula in terms of practicing self-consciousness, but it doesn't really feel like there's really a textbook in terms of how to make decisions when so much of the invisible is at play.
Yeah, what you do in one situation, you won't be able to necessarily apply that to the next situation. You really have to rely on that inner compass, and the inner compass is refined as I practice Raj Yoga.
Well, we're always welcoming those to let us know if you have questions, to type in the chat box, and we're always checking in for those on Instagram, how the audio is like. So please let us know in the future. Perhaps we'll have a little reflection.
In ancient myths, the hero would embark on a quest for good, which usually involved meeting some obstacle, some opposition. And in preparation for their quest, they would go into training, developing the skills, capacities, wisdom that would be needed in their trek, their journey, and developing so much self-trust. This is true for the spiritual journey as well. On a quest to restore the original personal dignity of the self. And there will be opposition from ego, from insecurity, from desires, from attachments. But if I go deeply into the training, make the experience of being a soul, a spiritual being, with all these capacities, make that very strong. That foundation will serve me well on the journey to my destination, restoring the dignity of the self and kindness in the world. Ensuring I have a very strong foundation of spiritual training. Cultivating those inner resources of the soul. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you for joining with us this evening. We wanted to let souls know, I believe it's the next two Tuesdays, there will be a pause in the interviews, and we'll be sending out that notice to those who are on the email distributing list. But for those on Instagram, you may or may not, or those on YouTube, you may not be aware of that. But yes, we will resume. I believe it's actually the first week of July. And so there's also the, I believe, the Raja Yoga course in English, the introductions, that will be happening in July. So that's the first 4 Wednesdays of July. So I believe there might be 5, but just check your calendars. It's basically the Wednesdays in July, and there are 4 sessions. And I believe it's 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And you're welcome to visit the center's website to register for that, whether it's online or on site. Registration is required, but we're always inviting souls to come to experience soul consciousness, experience what that connection, that remembrance is. Otherwise, all of this stays as theory. So that's on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays, 6:30 to 7:30, all online. However, there's an on-site session as well at the Northeast Center. Those are on Fridays, 6:30 to 7:30. Thank you for joining with us. Om Shanti.